Ready.
Hello and welcome back. Today, I have a very special guest, Mariya Reva. Thank you for joining me, Mariya. It's good to have you.
Thank you for having me, Michael. It's great.
Um, I find it a great joy to have guests, and not many people who are not in media want to do this. So when we spoke, you're like, we should do a podcast. I was like, yeah, definitely. I love when my friends tell me that they want to get on and have a conversation. And I'm actually embarrassed to say I didn't even realize your last name was Riva until recently. And that's why your company sounds so good. Riva, what is it?
Well, there's two companies. There's Reva Projects and then there's Reva Shelters.
Riva Projects and Shelters. And Riva sounds great. It's one of those great last names to have. It's just flows so nice. So kudos to that. And I really respect the fact that you're an entrepreneur. I love when people take initiative and they try to be a leader in something that they believe in and they work, their life revolves all about their career to try to make a statement in the world. So, why don't you tell me more about your venture, how long you've been doing it, what it's all about, etc.?
Sure. Thank you. It's more than a career for me. I think it's more of it was a career and then it turned into a passion. And I think like so many probably of your listeners during COVID who switched gears and went from careers to passion, I was probably one of those fall into that group. But basically, my background's in design and architecture. I graduated from Taliesin Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture in Scottsdale, Arizona, where I've lived in the middle of a desert for 3 years in a shelter and learned about vernacular architecture, organic architecture. And then I went on practicing architecture in your traditional corporate sort of atmosphere in big firms. And quickly I realized that I was falling into this trap where many professionals feel like they went to school for their passion and then their passion is not actually being used or lived or utilized in their everyday practice. And then I think that some of us spend later years in our career trying to find a way to merge passion and their profession to kind of enjoy what they love. And some really go extreme and follow their passion. And that was the path to the projects that we're working on now, which is to design emergency shelters for natural disasters, rapid deployment units for the military, Department of Defense, ecotourism. So the idea was to design a portfolio of 20 shelters that would respond to 20 different climate conditions. And truly, they would become architectural little monuments or experimental structures in a whole new, different world of architecture, which is this lightweight architecture and transitional architecture, which is fairly new. Yeah, I can talk about it forever, but I feel like it's part of a new movement. We're going to see a lot more of it coming out. And of course, there's a big cause. We're actually helping people at the time of need, which solves many problems.
Really nice. Very impressive. Also, there's a video, right? Okay, so
Yes.
we're going to show the video right now.
I've always been interested in understanding what shapes our environment and how the environment shapes us back. I wanted to celebrate environmental diversity of our planet, learn from vernacular architecture, and apply modern engineering solutions. In 2014, I envisioned developing a portfolio of 20 different shelters, which would be designed by architects from 20 different geographic locations, addressing unique challenges. I wanted to show the world our solutions to their local problems in the most essential way. Mass producing these shelters allows us to distribute the product easily and help organizations better prepare and respond to immediate needs of temporary housing, which gives us an opportunity to present our first solution prototypes. We're working with top structural, geotechnical, and mechanical engineers to produce unconventional solutions that align with the original vision, which is one, to provide a level of comfort and privacy to the end user in harsh climate conditions. Two, designed to be portable, easily assembled by 2 people under 1 hour with no loose tooling. And 3, to maintain material performance to be reused for over 10 years, even when stored in no climate-controlled conditions.
The cold shelter is designed for colder climate, for mountain regions, specifically for northern areas of Switzerland, where there is massive snow loads and we have strong harsh winds through year round. There were a lot of work done. We did a lot of investigation on materials, structures, the way people live in these harsh environments. The cold shelter will be flat packed, so it will be shipped within a 10-foot container. So it really takes a very small amount of space. The modular system allows us to increase the space. We have a 1.4 meter module, which is made of lightweight aluminum. It is rigid, produced. We can add up to 5 modules in a row, so we'll have a bigger space. We also add a layer of insulation to the inside. It's aerodynamic. It can be oriented towards the prevailing wind with its lower side that will allow the wind to pass through and create some aerodynamic area on the back to remove the snow from the roof.
With today's complex political and social unrest post-COVID, war in Ukraine, and local tensions around the world, we're seeing one of the largest human migrations in history. Our goal is to develop the Swiss Army knife level of quality shelter that brings a sense of dignity, security, privacy, temporary comfort at the time of need.
Yeah, wow, that was very impressive. And the question I have for you is, what drives you and why? Why are you doing this? Like, what drives you?
You have to ask deep questions. Well, I think what drives me is a love for, first of all, for myself, and not in a selfish way, but more in a deeper understanding where you have to recognize who you are, why you're here on this planet, what is it that your calling is, and then you have to love that and respect that personal realization to respectfully sort of um, go after that and act on it. And sometimes you can't act on it. You have to go around, right? But you have to always push for it. So I think my drive is somewhere where I sort of had some self-realization moments through in my 20s and even 30s. And I think that has to do with love for everybody around me, for what I do, and stay true to that passion.
Okay, great. And where do you see this going in the near future? What are you hoping to accomplish on the larger scale?
What we're hoping to accomplish is, first of all, help be part of this movement of new type of architecture that solves immediate problems for all classes of humanity, not just the rich or the poor, the middle class, like where it's the basic needs. You're basically helping people when, when there's a natural disaster, it doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank because there's no electricity and there's no ATM machines and no one cares about your checks. People want water, people want shelter, people need medication. And um, I want to sort of maybe invite more architects to think about the real needs and more practical solutions to those essential life saving sort of situations. And we're living more and more through that. I don't know if you heard today, but there was a test alarm that was happening on my
Yeah,
phone. Maybe you
yeah.
heard it.
Oh yeah, knew I heard about it and I forgot about it, and then both my phones just went off, and yeah, so
I don't know if you feel this, but like we also just got flooded in New York a week ago. And it just seems like there's more and more natural disasters happening everywhere. And there's just like, there's more need for it. Population's growing, cities are growing, and so on.
interesting. Okay, and so you mentioned earlier that you started out with a different passion in your life, and you kind of aimed toward it. It didn't work out, you said, and then it just evolved. Your priorities changed, and this evolved. How long have you been doing this for exactly?
Well, I've been in design since I was 14 years old.
Okay.
I went to FIT like for my first interior
And
design.
when was Riva born?
Riva Projects was born in my mind in 2014, yes. And it started really on paper and in action 2020.
Okay. And so you mentioned before, like you said, and I think that's very inspirational for people to hear, because what happens is I think that people have a passion. First of all, they're scared to act on it in the first place. I don't know why. Maybe they're just afraid that they won't succeed. So maybe it's easier just not to start, to experience that failure. But success is all about failure. And I myself have had different passions. And looking back in hindsight, you could say, oh, that was a waste of time because it didn't work out.
Mhm.
But on the contrary, I think that, first of all, that failure builds you up to where you are now. It makes you strong, it makes you knowledgeable. Also, the skills that you learn are very essential to what you need in order to what you're doing today.
Mhm.
So on one hand, you can regret and say, "Oh, that was a waste of time." But on the other hand, you should say, "I'm glad that I did this, because this is where I am today, and I'm so much more stronger because I've had that." So yeah, I love how, and people need to do trial and errors. I'm sure that, and I don't know if it's with you. I could say that it was with me and many other people, that when you do something, you have a lot of naysayers, and the naysayers can be your family members or people who love and care about you. And the reason why they do that is because they want to protect you. They feel that you're making a mistake. But I think, especially in the United States today, in the Western world we live in 2023, I understand if this was the 1800s. You need to be married by what, 16, 18 back then, have kids, because what was the life expectancy back then?
Right.
People died at what, 50? So, time's a ticking. But today, I feel like, because in the United States, in the Western world, people are getting married in their 30s now,
Mhm.
sometimes even 40s. So there's like so much time for you to explore and to fail and to see for yourself if this is the right thing for you or not. Because people can tell you, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. But you yourself can either succeed in it and prove them wrong, or you can fail yourself and learn and realize and move forward. So I applaud you for what you're doing. And you're not just doing anything. It feels like you want to change the world, but toward a positive way.
Thank you. Yes, no, I agree with you. And it's funny that you take the analogy of relationships and social expectations into account in today's times, because to me, I compare business and relationships kind of as the same. I think of it the same way. I treat relationships like business partners and vice versa, because they both need trust. They both take experience, negotiation, and in business, for example, I was in sales for a long time, business development, and one thing that sticks with me always is that there's no such thing as a product is too expensive or it's not good. When you get negative feedback from somebody, even when it is, it doesn't matter. There's always the right, then that means the product is not for that customer. There's a right customer for the right product. There's a match that happens in business relationships, in commerce, in romantic relationships. And I think that the more miles you get experience, the more you realize that just because you don't have an open door in this meeting, doesn't mean that you won't have it in the next one. And these rejections, like you said, build you up and make you more confident because you don't take it personal anymore. You just realize that it's just the wrong meeting. It's the wrong office and you're talking to the wrong person, just like you're sitting at the wrong date, with the wrong restaurant. So yes, and I think that's one of the reasons why people are choosing to maybe push their relationship a little bit, to later in their years, and people have sort of commitment. People treat relationships differently. They take what they want out of it, and they don't want to sort of commit to other things that are not necessarily that complicate things. And I think that happens with business a lot too. There's people who don't want to sign contracts when they have a deal. They just want to work on sort of trust. As a matter of fact, if you pull a contract out, they feel offended because it's kind of like, do you need a contract with me? I thought you trust me. I've proved my partnership with you for 10 years or whatever. I don't have a position on that situation, but it's a fact, right?
I have a position on that situation, and I don't want to sound negative, but in business, in anything, you should never trust. First of all, don't trust anyone. And of course, you could trust others more than others. Let's say you trust your mom more than you trust your friend, whatever it is. But always protect yourself because, and I'm saying this generally, not just you. I think it's very important because what happens is people start out friendly. They have ambitions and goals that they want to accomplish together, and they don't sign contracts. And then people start to see things different. Kind of like when you see a cup of water half full or half empty, right? It's the same thing. It's just how you see it. Suddenly they start to see things differently. Hey, I started the company. No, I started the company. This was my idea. No, this was my idea. Well, why should you get 50%? You should only get 40%, whatever it is. It happened very infamously with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, right? He apparently, according to the movie, that's really the only source I've had, but he screwed his partner over and tried to, and his partner sued him and won the lawsuit. But why go through that in the first place? Always protect yourself. Always, always, always. And I feel like if one opportunity, so you are also mentioning, before I say this, I just want to clarify. You were also saying that in the past, if people were trying to get something done and it didn't work out, like, did you say something about that? About relationships?
Like that it wasn't, if you wanted to get something, please clarify. What was your understanding
So
of
what
it?
I was gonna say is like one situation I was in, and I think because so this is what I'm gonna say. I remember I was young, like 21 years old, and I was in college, and I wanted to get really back into acting. Like acting was my passion at the time. I wanted to be an actor. So I contacted this girl from my theater class, and I was brainstorming with her, and I said, I want to get back into it. She's Indian, and she says, why don't you look Indian? You have Indian features. I didn't think so, but okay. And she says, come be part of this Indian commercial. But it's on cable television, but still, like,
Yeah.
all right, why not? Let's start somewhere.
Work.
So she was going to be there. And I speak to the director. He says, bring your wardrobe. So I brought my wardrobe. I took off from work. It was raining that day. There was a nut job who cut me off and wanted to fight me on the road. I don't know how that happened. I end up at the restaurant, and I was the only non-Indian person there. And I kind of got fired from the show, from the commercial. And the reason was because, I wasn't smiling enough, something like that. So I was so angry because I went through a lot just to get there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I took off from work. I'm not even getting paid for this. All I got was some Indian food out of it. They're like, oh, you could treat yourself to the buffet. I brought my wardrobe. I almost got my ass kicked on the road. Like, what gives? So my first instinct was just leave out of anger, But then I thought, no, I'm going to speak to the director. After the commercial, when they wrapped up, I went to him and I said, hey, I had a great time and I'm sorry it didn't work out. And if you can give me some tips about like what I could do to improve myself, because I really thought I can do a good job, whatever it was. So we linked up and he gave me his business card. We ended up working on an independent film together, and we became cool for a while. We no longer speak today, but the point is we became cool for a while. And then he also admitted to me, he says, we didn't fire you because you didn't smile enough, because this is an Indian commercial. You're not Indian. And we couldn't have you on the commercial. And I was afraid to say that, which total respect.
Yeah.
For some reason, the girl who invited me there didn't think it was a big deal. But the point is, the point of this whole story is that people should always think rationally before they act impulsively.
Right.
And I think that's what you were also kind of saying before, right?
100%. And it's funny that you say that as a cultural example, because I have one of those as well. But I approach these things with an understanding that you're not a perfect fit. Then you should, maybe take a look at other areas where you may fit better, from all kinds of layers of, whether it's cultural or it's professional, it's experience based, or just like vibes. It happens all the time. And if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. And it's like that with relationships, with businesses. Never take it personal. And I hope that people spend more time trying, and knocking on doors rather than giving up, and because all you're doing is you're losing time. And if you keep knocking, just look at statistics.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like and you keep mentioning relationships, and I agree. It's something to do with love relationships as well. I personally, if let's say it didn't work out with a girl, or if in business a partnership also didn't work out, one way I have thinking is I don't even want to know what the reason is, because if I was that good, or if I was that compatible, I should say, then it would work, and that's it. But on the well, you know what? With love relationships and business relationships, I think it is different, because with love relationships, it's either there's a vibe or there's no vibe. If there's no vibe, chemistry. If there's no chemistry, then that's it. There's nothing else to talk about. You could be the nicest people, you can have things in common, but if there's no chemistry, there's no chemistry. But in business, I guess it could be the same. Like, let's say somebody gets fired from their job. Companies don't really tell the person why they get fired.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to focus so much on why you got fired, just look for a new job already, because that you're wasting time and you're wasting energy. However, I think for some clarification, if you could find out things, maybe you should, because it could help you in the future. Like with a dating thing, maybe you did something stupid and you shouldn't do that anymore, or maybe with same thing with your job, let's say. But I think I'm a firm believer in balance with everything, but I'm a firm believer is just like move on. Time is money, next, and try to just be better. And that's it.
Yeah, it's I think there's a supply and demand. And even in relationships, when I think it's a mindset, like when I interviewed for a job 1 year and then I wasn't ready, but then I came in a year later and I was ready and I was a little bit more aggressive about it because I wanted it more. Same thing with relationships. People maybe don't want it and they're not interested in investing as much, but then when they're ready, they do. It's it's an interesting analogy. Of course, it's different. Chemistry, very true. But what is true is that For example, chemistry is different. There's romantic chemistry, and then there's like actual, like some sort of practical chemistry where like things flow because it's easy to work with certain people. And like for me, for example, people in my team, you would never see us on the street in a cafe together. We just don't have anything in common. I grew up in Brooklyn. They grew up in a different country, different age groups, different cultures. And but when we work together, we're amazing. And no one cares about each other's differences. We're super respectful and we just flow. And so there's that kind of chemistry. So it's interesting. That,
Right.
yeah.
And so with your company, you must have made some sacrifices, no? Because you're young. You can live your best life. You can travel. I mean, I know you travel for work, and I want you to talk about that real quick. But before we get there, you can do other kind of traveling, like just getting a tan and drinking and eating whatever you want, and doing young people stuff. But I feel like to be in the position that you're in, you had to have made a lot of sacrifices, and I want you to talk about those sacrifices. And I actually applaud you for them, and because a lot of people just don't have that in them. They're only thinking about now. They're not thinking about the future. So go ahead.
Well, Michael, I think they're the same sacrifices that you're making with your business, right? I think we're both. Are you a millennial?
I think I think I am a millennial. I
You
was
are.
born in '86. When
Yeah,
were you
I was
born?
88.
88.
Yeah,
So
we're
we're a
millennials.
millennial. I think it starts at 1981.
Yeah. So, like, basically, I think that a lot, like our generation in general, we all went to school, we graduated, we had a lot of debt, and we kind of hit recession in 2008, then in like 2011, then the pandemic, then now, and this is like our prime years. So, we're supposed to be like having families and hang out on vacations and cruises, but we're all still trying to stabilize, and not just financially, but like just like professionally and socially. So I think that um, some of us who are driven, we sacrifice, like you and I, and but that's because we have a drive. We love what we do, and yes, I've made some serious sacrifices, and I travel for work, but I'm super excited about it because when I travel for work, I don't feel guilty traveling, and I learn a lot and I gain perspective and I gain more passion, and I'm driven more because I learn new things about like that country and those opportunities in that country maybe. Um, like I just got back from Ukraine and it's full blown war. And everyone was like, "Why are you going there? You're meant, you're crazy." And I basically, well, first of all, the nature of my profession is to be in the place where there's a disaster. So moving forward, you will find Maria in middle of ruins of places in the world. So of course, I went there to in search of opportunity to help serve that market from a shelter perspective. I've met with the mayors in Kiev and in Lviv, and some important investors in Odessa who manage large real estate development and port business. And I was basically trying to see where the opportunities come. And I was really excited to learn, first of all, that Ukraine, despite the fact that it's in full blown war, it's a great place to come in and invest and do it now. Um, can I tell you a little bit about Ukraine? Okay.
Of course, of
So,
course. That's that's one of the conversations I was actually anticipating because not to take the spotlight away, I
yeah.
just want to mention how I was one of the people. I'm like, whoa, you're going to Ukraine? Are you sure? Like, is that a good idea? Because what the rest of the world is thinking is like, we watch the news and we're like, oh my God, there's a war. Like, wouldn't you end up in the crossfire? But I think there are cities that just don't feel the effects of the war, right?
Well, I think they all do. Like Kiev gets bombed every day. Odessa in the last 2 months or so has been also in a hot area. They've been, literally every night there's about 40 shahids flying towards Odessa. And about 30 of them get knocked down and 10 of them do crash. And those that do get shut down, like the pieces fall and they still can kill people. But basically, My trip started in Poland. I met with some partners in Poland, and then we drove through Lviv border, which was an experience.
So real quick, you can't fly to Ukraine from the
No,
US.
there's the airline, the air entire space is down. So the only way to get in is through either Romania or like Poland, because the Belarus and the Russian side is occupied area. So major cities like Kiev, Odessa, and Lviv get bombed. Kiev gets bombed. Well, not bombed, but they send rockets there every night. When we drove into Lviv, you felt something was off because you're driving on a highway and you're seeing ambulances and Red Cross and United Nations vans coming towards you, taking soldiers out. Roads are brand new. They're rebuilt. Even though they were just recently bombed, they continue fixing them right away. I was surprised to see brand new gas stations, electric car chargers everywhere, way more than here in US, which shows you that I think that they're really preparing for more sustainable, newer infrastructure and, of course, electrical energy. Of course, the sad part is that I saw a lot of cemeteries, new cemeteries on both sides of the road. But you also see sort of trucks of new cars, BMWs and Range Rovers, Mercedes Benz, everything going towards Kiev.
I just have to cut you off for a second because I remember I went to Cuba
Yeah.
in 2017, I think, and it's a poor country, and I felt like it was a blast from the past because you see like those taxis from the American cars, but from the 1950s,
Yeah.
and out of nowhere, I see some Audi or BMW pass by, like the hottest model, and I'm thinking, like in a poor country like Cuba, right now in Ukraine, there's a crisis, there's a war, but you still have those ballers that somehow manage
Right.
to get the cars that they want and drive them around.
Yes, and it's crazy because so when we got to Lviv, and I'll tell you about that, when you walk in the city in Lviv, you see that either college students or elderly senior people. I personally saw a huge gap anywhere between 20 and 60 years old. I feel like this group of population in Ukraine is either serving in the front lines or they're out in Europe somewhere over the border. But the whole point is that it's active war, senior citizens who chose not to leave because they have nothing in other countries. And then you have kids, college students. So that's who's on the streets. But then the businesses that chose not to leave during the war stayed, and their business actually exploded. Like one of my friends in Kiev, who's he's in the electric car charging business. He said that all of his competitors left, so he had all the business for him, and that's why you saw a lot of these cars. So not a lot of it is not necessarily corruption, although it is everywhere. People say how Ukraine has corruption. I say there's corruption in US and in every single country. It's just different type. But the fact is that there's also opportunities, and you have to be that crazy mind to see those opportunities during high risk times. And I think it's definitely there. I can tell you that a lot of investors are standing by and choosing to hold off with investment into Ukraine because your investments are not protected by the government. That's the biggest thing right now that they're trying to change and switch. And I think that when that switch happens, there's going to be a flood of people going in there. Everyone's kind of just like waiting right now and anticipating it. BlackRock announced formally, publicly in July that they're officially making deals with Zelensky. They're coming in and they're investing. And I met with a few folks from BlackRock in August, and I asked them what it was about, and they kind of discreetly didn't tell me yet. It was a different department. But while I was in Ukraine, I spoke to the locals, and I don't know if it's gossip, but I've heard solar panels and power. So if solar panels and electric sort of whole movement becomes one of the maybe possible trends that BlackRock will be developing in terms of infrastructure in Ukraine, then of course this needs to be protected. So this
Air raid alert. Proceed to the nearest shelter. Don't be careless.
Wow.
Overconfidence is your weakness.
I'm sorry, I forgot to turn off my app in Ukraine. This is what the sirens sounds like. So there's an app that you can install. I have to, well, it just says, so right now it says that Odessa um, is getting bombed, and you can see a map, and it'll tell you live which part of Ukraine are under attack as we speak. It's going to load. It's updated every second. So right now you can see the southern part of Ukraine. And then what you do is you go to Telegram and you follow accounts for that region that you're interested in. And the Telegram, the military will tell you exactly what's coming and which direction it's coming from. So if it's crazy. I was on a train with someone who was escaping Russian occupied area, and this girl told me, if it's a Shahid, I might not be pronouncing it right, then you can hide. It's fine because they'll probably knock it down, but you can hide. If it's a rocket, forget it because doesn't matter where you go, you're dead. And if it's like the supersonic rocket that flies within like 2 minutes from Crimea, then don't even worry about it because you won't even get an alarm. You'll be dead before you know it. And it was crazy to me to see this, like she was saying this, like kind of with a smile,
Nonchalant.
because it became the new normal for them. They learned how to live around it. And people don't even hide anymore. They're just like, oh, it's just rockets flying. Like it's a normal thing.
Well, yeah, life must go on. How long can people hide for? They have to make money. They have to provide. They have to live their life, and it's really unfortunate. But yeah, so when they hear these sirens, they're just like, oh well, and then they go hide, and they come out when it's clear, and it's terrible. And we're praying for Ukraine, and we hope that the war ends immediately.
Yeah, that would be, of course, great. But you also have to start thinking about what happens after the war in Ukraine. And one of the topics that was interesting that came up was the fact that currently Ukraine, 1/3 of Ukraine has mines all over in the land. In some areas, there's multiple mines per 1 square meter. They estimate that it's going to take about 5 to 10 years to demine Ukraine, which is going to be a collective effort between different international organizations that will professionally do this. But also, you will have veterans who will return from front lines that will be missing limbs, and you have to build new infrastructure for ADA compliance, ramps, roads, elevators, something that old Ukraine didn't have before. Medicine, with robotics and all of everything that can help sort of with the new life, I think is going to become a new thing there. But more importantly, I organized a few events in New York for Ukrainian refugees. And when I asked them, do you plan to return? 50% of them say, probably not. So if that's true, then Ukraine is going to be missing an entire generation, maybe 2 generations of people who are not going to come back. So to me, I look at it as an opportunity for people this age, my age, your age, Generation X, to go in and to invest. And it's an opportunity to develop new Ukraine because it's a big reset. And you have the port, you have connection to all of Europe. I mean, this is a gold mine, not to mention, everyone else who's investing into it now already that I'm sure is not going to pull out with a loss. So it's I really wish that we focus on the opportunities there right now, and see it as a place that's kind of like a playground for a country that has so much potential. And I think there's risks everywhere, but I've seen great successes even right now happening there. So everything that starts must end, and this war will be over probably next year, because we have so many elections happening in Poland, in Ukraine, in US. I think sometime between those 3 elections, things will get wrapped up.
Yeah, I feel like that's everybody's speculation, that we're waiting for elections and hopefully that will shake things up and this war will come to an end. And I would love to thank you for sharing your experience and your story with us with your time in Ukraine. And do you have any plans to go back there again soon, or?
Yes, I plan to go back there every 6 months from now on. I'm developing a lot of cool things there. I'm planning to move my entire headquarters there for Reva projects. I realize that I'm going to centralize the entire distribution there because you have Turkey, you have Europe. I mean, it's perfect. And also I think I would love to bring jobs to the veterans who are going to come back and sort of bring meaning to or try to be part of the Ukrainian American waves of professionals who can support that economy and that culture. But professionally, in terms of being an American, I'm still here and I'm global. But whenever I travel, I always see an opportunity. And right now, I see it for Ukraine, not just because I'm Ukrainian, but because it really is a blank canvas. It kind of reminds me of what Dubai was in 2007. Like you could just kind of come in and do things, except that it's less protected like Dubai was or like Iceland is or many other countries where you can invest but you can't do much because you're not a local. Ukraine's very friendly to foreigners. So yeah, I plan to go back there and I plan to have a business on the two time zones for sure.
Great. That sounds great. So thank you for coming today. It was a real pleasure. And I would love to, if you're willing, I would love to have you back here one day. So in the near future.
Of course. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate
All
it.
right. Thank you. And until next time.